Welcome to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. If this is your first time joining me, or welcome back if you are a regular viewer. I appreciate all of you joining me today to talk about books I have read in one day. Now, I really struggle with this. So if I read a book in one day, it usually means I really love it and I am devouring it, as I say. But also sometimes when I do read a book in one day, it feels like it was too short and I want it to last. And I often feel like I want to reread it again and again. And in some cases, as I'll show you, that's not the case. But I'm going to talk about 5 books that I have read in one day. And there are probably more, but these are the top 5 that kind of stand out in my recent memory or that I reread frequently. So here we go. The first one is 11 Hours by Pamela Aarons, and this book was recommended to me by one of the staff members at Square Books. It wasn't even on the shelf of staff picks. It was a conversation that we were having about my inability to decide, and she said, look, this is my favorite book that I have read. It's very short. I read it in one day, and so I purchased it. And I read this, I'm pretty sure it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. The story follows a woman named Lori, I think. I think it was spelled Lore. And she comes into the hospital in labor, and she comes in alone and is very quiet and not sharing a lot of detail and very stressed. And the nurse who is on duty, Francine, is trying to assist her. And I don't want to say too much because there's a lot that unfolds that I think it's nice if you don't know. But the story follows the 11 hours that Lore is in labor. It's very compelling. It's very fast-paced. It's not for those people who are pregnant probably, or who have some anxiety about childbirth kinds of issues. But I loved it. I did devour it, and I read it easily in one day. It was fantastic, and I gave it 5 stars. Another book I read in one gulp doesn't have a jacket cover. This is an old copy that survived a lot of things, but it's The Stepford Wives by Ira Levin. I read this as a young person. I was not yet an adult when I read it. My sister had read it and really thought it was creepy and that I would enjoy it, passed it on to me, and this was her copy that I took from her library after she passed away. She, donated her books to me, but this remains one of my favorite kind of, at that time, modern horror stories. It follows a housewife who moves with her family to a new neighborhood. Her husband is very excited to purchase this new house, and he has some work colleagues that recommended this subdivision, and he can't wait to move. And so they move from New York City to this suburb, and she is a bit displaced and feeling at odds with the move. She's a photographer. They have a couple young kids, and she tries to make friends. And she discovers that some of the ladies in the subdivision just seem pretty odd to her. And she and her friend group often talk about how odd they are and how connected they are to housekeeping and perfect wives. And this community called Stepford is just very unusual to them. There's a pretty neat progression of this plot, which is pretty creepy and fascinating to me. It was made into a movie in the 70s starring Catherine Ross and Paula Prentice, and I can't remember the name of the guy that played her husband. It was also remade a few years ago and stars Nicole Kidman, Bette Midler, and some other pretty big names. But this story always will remain one of my favorites, and it's a one-day read, and so I read it again and again every now and again just because I like it so much. The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie is another really nice, short, day-long read. It's a Miss Marple mystery, and Miss Marple is my favorite over all of the detectives in the Agatha Christie novels. This is an easy read. So Colonel and Mrs. Bantry, I wanted to make sure that I remembered their names. Colonel and Mrs. Bantry discover the body of a blonde woman in their library. And there's a whole, obviously a whole process whereby Miss Marple and the police and some other people try to discover what happened to this girl and who she is and how she ended up in their library. I reread this every few years. This is a fairly new edition. This is a, gosh, I can't even see what it is. It's so tiny. This is a Black Dog and Leventhal edition. And this was a popular edition that released a lot of Agatha Christie's not too long ago. And it was available at that time in Barnes & Noble and also on Amazon. A lot of Agatha Christie's are one-day reads, now that I think about it. I have read several in one day. The next one on my list, and I love this edition, I got it last Christmas, is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I typically reread this every Christmas, and this one is an illustrated edition, which is why I asked for this particular one. It has the Arthur Rackham illustrations in it, which are just beautifully done. I'm not sure there's anyone in the world that doesn't know the plot to A Christmas Carol, but just in case you don't, this follows Ebenezer Scrooge, who is an accountant, bookkeeper kind of guy, and he's very challenging, a difficult boss to work for, and he is not kind to his employees and just in general, not a very nice, happy guy. And when he goes home on Christmas Eve, he is cranky and surly, and he is then visited by some ghosts, the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. And those ghosts illuminate what his life was like and is like, and what it could be like if he continues on the same pathway in his surliness. A Christmas classic for sure, one that I can definitely complete in one day and that I thoroughly continue to enjoy. It's a tradition. And finally, this is a fairly new read for me, and I don't know that I'll ever reread it again because it left me in complete tears, but it is The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. This is a new movie adaptation as well. It came out last weekend. This was a readathon pick for me, and so I picked it up one Saturday morning, and I was surprised to discover that by Saturday evening I had completed this book. It's a little bigger, but it is a fast read, short chapters. It follows the story of a man named Denny, and he adopts a dog named Enzo, and this is a lab, so it's very special to me because we had a yellow lab that looked very much like Enzo. It's the story of their life together before and after Denny meets his wife, and their lives begin together, and Enzo accepts her into his life as well, and it is told through Enzo's eyes. I think there's something about books about dogs that is beautiful and wonderful, and it makes me happy that I read them, but they often end. If they span that dog's whole life, they often end in a difficult way. So just be certain that you're ready to traverse the entire life of Enzo and Denny and their family. It's just a lovely one-day read, and I think we're going to go see the movie. I think we're going to go see the movie. I'd like to see the movie. Just need to bring a lot of Kleenex. Just need to have a lot of Kleenex with you when you read that book. And I think that's the only one that will really provoke some tears, maybe 11 hours. It had some moments that were it was very well written. I was really, really surprised. I think all of these books are 5-star reads for me, but they're definitely one-day reads, so I hope you've enjoyed this. And I'd love to hear what your one-day reads are, because honestly, I love a one-day read for, like I said, a variety of reasons, because it's so enjoyable to finish a book in one day. You feel so productive and good about yourself, but also sometimes in the readathons, it's really nice to have a book that you can finish in one day. So I would love to hear your one-day reads, your favorite one-day reads, and if you've read any of these, what you thought about them. Thanks, as always, for joining me. I hope you have a great time looking at these books and all the other books that are on your shelves. And as always, happy reading. Bye.